Now, I'm for small government, but that's one of their main jobs, and to punish evil people, punish lewd offenders. Look at Romans chapter 13, verse 3. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Will thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. So here's the deal. Government, you want to know who the terrorist should be? The terrorist shouldn't be a bunch of ragheads, Middle Eastern ragheads. The terrorist should be our government. Our government should strike fear and strike terror in evil, wicked people. What's going to happen to them if they do evil, wicked stuff? Amen. That's what God ordained and that's what God established government to do. One of the main jobs of government is not to pass laws that you can't drink a Big Gulp. It's not to be all up in our business, our details of our everyday life. One of the main jobs of government is to bear not the sword in vain. Amen. So what do you do with a sword? You don't spank people, you behead people. Right. Our government should be executing people and striking fear and terror in people who would break God's laws. Amen. And if they did that, then we would not have guys like the tourniquet killer. Now, I mentioned Thursday night that I might talk about this guy. Who heard about the tourniquet killer this week? Now, let me tell you about the tourniquet killer. He was executed Thursday. This is an article I got, I think it was CBS. Huntsville, Texas is where he was executed. It says, Texas carried out the nation's first execution of 2018 Thursday evening, giving lethal injection to a man who became known as Houston's tourniquet killer because of his signature murder technique on 4 female victims. So what he'd do is he'd take like a shoestring and put a stick in it and twist it up and I guess he'd strangle them and he would make it like a tourniquet. His name was Anthony Allen Shore. He was put to death for one of those slayings. The 1992 killing of a 21-year-old woman whose body was dumped in the drive-thru of a Houston Dairy Queen. In his final statement, this is Thursday night, Shore, who's 55 years old, was apologetic and his voice cracked with emotion. See, reprobates can be apologetic. Yep. Judas repented. Judas was a reprobate, and remember, Judas repented. Right. Just because he was apologetic don't mean nothing. He's just really sorry he got caught is what it was. But just because somebody's apologetic doesn't mean they're saved or anything like that. He says, no amount of words or apology could ever undo what I've done. Shore said while strapped to the death chamber gurney. He said, I wish I could undo the past, but it is what it is. It went on to say, as the lethal dose of phenobarbital began, Shore said the drug burned. He said, ooh, I can feel that. And he said that just before slipping into unconsciousness. Now, they got that wrong. He's not unconscious. He's fully aware of his surroundings as he's burning in hell. Amen. He's fully aware of the flames. He's weeping and gnashing his teeth right now, so he's not unconscious. But the reason why I point this out is because ultimately this is our government's fault. Talking to you about, we should render to Caesar lewd offenders so they could deal with them, and they won't deal with them properly. But this is our government. This tourniquet killer is our government's fault. The reason why he was able to strangle 4 young ladies with a tourniquet is because of our failed government. Hey, let's just put the blame where the blame's due. It's our government's fault. And here's the reason why I say it's our government's fault. Because in 1988, Shore received 8 years probation and became a registered sex offender for sexually assaulting 2 relatives, his own daughters. Guy molested his own 2 daughters. 5 years later is when Shore was arrested for the 1992 slaying of this young girl after a tiny particle recovered from under her fingernail matched to his DNA. So the Bible's clear, the government chews the sword on rapists. And guess what? Molestation is a form of rape. He should have been put to death. So if our government had been doing their job, those 4 young ladies would still be alive today. If our government, as soon as he got brought up with molestation charges, cut a stinking head off. Amen. But see, because our politicians would rather pass laws making big gulps illegal, and our politicians would rather pass laws protecting the right of some whore to murder and abort her baby, you know, they don't pass the proper laws that the Bible says. You know, here's a law. Look, if our politicians are all for abortion rights, well, let's have some abortion rights. Let's abort these pedophiles. Let's abort these molesters. Amen. How about let's abort them and make our streets a safer place and make the United States a safer place and do it like God said do it. You know, I hate to get the Bible involved in this thing, but God said abort, God said murder, God said kill these wicked people.